Welcome to My Life. We have a special guest this week. Pastor Bob Service is with us. Pastor Bob was the longtime pastor of the Oakwood Community Church. And you know, when we put this program together, our main goal was to have guests who've lived in the community for a long time and got out among the people and knew something about what was going on and who could kind of describe some of the changes that have taken place through the years. So we checked all the boxes off when we got to your name, and you're the perfect guest. And I'm so glad you could make it over here. Okay. In addition to that, you happen to be the brother of our station manager, Bill Service.
Yes.
And so I know you're going to have some very interesting stories to tell about that.
About him.
But about him, yeah.
Yes.
Before we get into all that, Pastor Bob, though, I'd really appreciate it. You've got a big 60th anniversary celebration coming up for the Oakwood Community Church.
Yes.
And I'd like you to share a little information about that with us.
All right. On the Saturday the 23rd, from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock, they have a big thing going on with games outside for the kids, all the inflatable things, and probably a dunk tank for the adults, so they can probably dunk me. And then from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, 2:30, they have lunch. And then from 12:30 to 1:30, I'll be the speaker to entertain the people while they're eating their lunch. And some of the stories will probably upset their stomachs, and so we'll have a lot of food, extra food. But I have a lot of stories about the history of the church is what I'm going to do in some of the...
You're not going to get Brother Bill over there in the dunk tank, are you?
That would be a good idea. I didn't think of that, but we'll work on it.
Nice being here, folks.
Yes, that would be good. And then on Sunday, from during the worship service from 10:30 to noon, we'll have different ones talking about the history of the church, and I'll have a part of that too. And some of the things that that they thought were really exciting over my 40-some years there. One of the specials was children's sermons. I always did children's sermons, so they want me to do one of those. And the famous one is the Tater family, and so I'll be doing that on Sunday morning. But it's going to be quite a celebration. They missed the 50th because we're going through a transition of a new guy coming in to take my place, and so somehow we missed it. So we're doing a 60th to make up for it.
And how many years were you pastor of that church?
Officially 42. And then I'm still hanging around, but I'm not the pastor. We took in a new man that started.
So you've married and buried a lot of people.
I've the 12 adults that were there when I came, there are 2 left.
Really?
And they're going to be there on that weekend. Finally, I got to talk them into coming, so they can be there to be recognized as the people that held the church together for the first 12 years. They went through 5 pastors in the first 12 years, and these people hung in there, and then from that point on we've grown. Now we have 250 or 300 people now. So,
well, we know that the church is over on Oakwood right now, and it's a fairly new build. It looks like a fairly new building.
yes, we opened in 2/2 of 02. So,
And where was it before that?
it was on Baldwin Road, just south of Oakwood Road, in the big city of Oakwood.
In the big city.
Yes, yeah. And now it's a wedding chapel, and they rent it out to another group for church services.
I see.
And I do probably 25 weddings there a year because I'm generally the pastor that does most of her weddings.
And although you're considered a retired pastor right now, you still do a fair number of weddings and funerals?
I do a lot of weddings. I do about 35 weddings a year at either church building, and a lot of outside ones and at golf courses, wherever somebody asks me to do it. And I'm doing a lot of funerals for some reason. I've done 6 funerals in the last month now, which is kind of hard because a lot of them are old friends. Because when you get older, they just... But the weddings are really exciting because a lot of weddings are kids that I did the parents' weddings years ago, and now their children are getting married, and I'm marrying second generation, and that's a lot of fun.
So you've gotten to know a lot of people through all
Yes.
those years, haven't
A
you?
lot of people know me, and I have no idea who they are. I'll be in a restaurant, and somebody will come up and say, "How are you doing, Pastor Bob?" And I said, "I'm doing just fine. You probably don't remember me, but you did my wedding 30 years ago." And I says, "You're right. I don't remember you."
But it's wonderful that they remember you.
Yes, I've done 914 weddings in those years
Wow.
since 1966.
Let's go back to where it all started. What
Okay.
city were you born in?
I was born in Bloomfield, Bloomfield Township, born on a farm, actually born on the farm, and the doctor came out to see me after I was born, and same thing with my brothers. We were all born on the farm.
What was your family situation back then? Was your dad was a farmer, right?
No, Mom came over from Germany just after World War I, and she came over because she was taking care of a colonel in the Army, United States Army, and when she was a nanny for his two daughters.
Really?
And so when the war was over and he was done with his business over there, they moved him back to the States, and the girls said, well, they're not going without Lena. And so he worked it out so he could bring my mother over here, and which was quite a trip for her. But she was the youngest of 11, and her parents had both died when she was real young. And so she didn't have anything much there, so she came over here. And then, and my dad was raised in a show business family, which kind of moved right on anyway. But anyway, he was in show, his parents were in showbiz, and so he was unexpected because they didn't plan on any kids because they were so busy.
So he probably traveled around a lot, huh?
Yeah, yep. His parents, that's what they did. They traveled all over the country. They had a traveling show with comedians and dancers and the whole thing.
What years would that have been?
That would be probably from right around just before 1900, because my dad was born in 1900, so it had to be the late 1800s.
Would that have been considered a vaudeville sort of
That's
thing?
pretty much what it was, yes.
Okay.
And they were very wealthy. And then when my dad was, they didn't have room for him in their life, so they put him in a military academy to grow up. And that's where he learned how to drink and smoke and cuss and all that stuff. And then when he was 21, his parents had died. And when he was 21, he inherited a fortune. And being single and crazy, he went through it all. And by the time he was 32 and met my mother, he was completely broke. He spent it all on friends and cars. He would buy the sharpest cars back then, these beautiful cars back in the 20s and early 30s, and wreck them because he was drunk all the time. And he'd wreck them, and he'd get on the phone and call up a dealer and say, "I just totaled out a car, bring me another one." And they deliver another one to him.
So did your mom make him settle down?
Yes, she married him to take care of him because he had no life. Everybody was gone, all of his friends, his drinking friends. He didn't have any money, so they didn't have anything to do with him anymore.
So what did he end up doing for a living?
Then he went to work in small factories and ended up working for General Motors and retired from there.
Now, you weren't exactly born in the poor part of town.
No, we were born in Bloomfield. It was part of the Edsel Ford estate. And we were, Mom and Dad bought one of the servants' quarters. I think he was a chauffeur or something. We lived in this little 2-bedroom house.
Oh, so they actually bought a small piece of property over there.
Yes. Some friends loaned them $3,500 to buy this 5 acres in a little house. And then they sold 2 acres back to the people that bought the mansion for more money than they paid for the whole thing. And so they got to pay that off. And that was their start. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about more about your mother's history, but we need to take a break right now. We'll be right back.
Okay.
We're back with Pastor Bob Service, and you were telling us about how your mother came over from Germany because she was working for a military officer as a nanny,
Yes.
and you said her mom and dad had passed away, but she had a lot of brothers and sisters. Did she ever have an opportunity to see any of her siblings again?
No, my mother never did. She came over on a transport ship with the soldiers, and she was sick all the way over here. It was like a three-week trip coming over on a transport ship back in those days, and she was so sick she would never go back, and she would never get in a plane, so she never saw her family again.
So she never really expressed a major desire to see them
She
again?
wanted to. They wrote to each other,
Yeah.
but she never saw them again. She came over when she was, I think, 21, and she never saw them again.
Yeah. Tell me about some of your memories of growing up over there in Bloomfield Hills. I'm sure you met some interesting people.
Well, let me see. We went to Bloomfield Hills High School, graduated from there, and my mother, my dad became a Christian, and that solved his drinking problem. Once he became a Christian, he stopped his drinking and cussing and
Did your
everything.
mom have something to do with that?
It's an interesting thing how he came to the Lord. His aunt took him to see this woman evangelist down in Detroit, on tent evangelism meeting, a woman evangelist. It was so fascinating for people. She would just pack it out. Everybody wanted to see this woman evangelist. And so my dad went to it, and that's when he accepted Jesus through her ministry and found out she was a fraud. And so I said, Dad, did that bother you at all, that, the one who leads you to the Lord and you become a Christian under her ministry, and find out that she was doing it for the money? And he said it didn't matter who she was, it's what she taught. And what she preached was from the Bible, so it says, nope, doesn't bother me at all. So that's what turned his life around.
And he was able to stick with that the rest
Oh,
of his
yeah,
life.
the rest of his life. And then my mom, in our little two-bedroom home, living in Bloomfield, we're the only poor people, I think, there. And so Mom started up a Sunday school in our house. And so all the kids from the neighborhood came, and she built it up to over 60 kids in our little house, and got some help, and had this Sunday school class. And so that's where we were pretty well raised in our Christian life through our mom because of that, until we moved up to near here.
So you spent all of your youth in Bloomfield, really, didn't you? You graduated from high school over there.
And Bluefield Hills, and that's when, after graduation, we moved up to where we are, just around the corner from where I live now.
So you really moved out in the country, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
Right.
Yeah.
Sticking with high school for a minute, did you play any sports in high school?
In high school, we were what they call a college prep high school,
What high school did you go to?
Bloomfield Hills High School, which is no longer.
At that time, was that the only high school they had?
That was the only Bloomfield
Okay.
Hills. Then
Yeah.
they split and went to Andover, and now they're back to one again. But yeah, the only sports we had were kind of pickup things. We had a football team. I played on the football team, but we only could have scrimmages with other high school football teams because we weren't in any league. We were a real small school. There were only 37 in my graduating class from high school.
So you knew each other pretty well.
Oh yes, some real good friends in high school.
Were there, I mean, seeing as how you lived where you lived, were there any friends who went on to be so-called rich and famous?
I'm sure they did. I don't know what
You don't know
what
that.
happened, but I know some of them got cars for graduation, which
Isn't that
was
amazing?
quite a thing. Yes.
All right, so you graduated from high school, and how long after that was it before you moved out this way?
We moved right after I graduated from high school, and so excuse me.
Take your time.
Yeah, my brother, my brother Bill, went to Goodrich High School, graduated. I'm losing my voice. And anyway, he went to Goodrich High School and graduated, and he was really big in high school, and in the band, and had his own little band, dance band, and everything. And he continued that on when he went to into the Navy. So he had quite a history too.
So about what year would that have been that you moved to Goodrich?
That would be 1953 when I graduated.
What was the reason that your folks moved to Goodrich?
That's a real good question. I have no idea why they moved to Goodrich.
Did they buy a farm out there? Or?
It was 22 acres, just a little farm. We did a little bit of farming. We just had a horse and a cow and a calf and all that kind of stuff. A lot of chickens and ducks and all that. But just a
And was your dad still working in
yes,
factories
he was still
at
working.
that time?
He was still working at General Motors, and until he retired, and he died in '72, I think.
Yeah. Now, you had an older brother,
Yes,
and what was his first name?
his was John.
John.
Yeah. My
And-
mom had a hard time with learning the language, so she made it simple. She said Johnny, Bobby, and Billy.
They kept it simple.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Unfortunately, you lost John at an early age.
Yes. One day when we were coming home from school, he just said, Bob, I don't know what's wrong. He said, we had a 2-story schoolhouse, and he said, I had a hard time getting up and down the stairs. I'm just so weak, I can hardly do it. And we were really active in sports and stuff.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 15. Yeah, because I just turned 16. when
And
he
Bob
died.
was how? And John was how old?
John was 16. We were exactly a year and a half apart. He was
So
born on
they were very
November-
close.
Yes, we were like twins or better. He was my best friend in the
Yeah.
whole world. And then, so we found he's so weak, and so Mom and Dad finally took him to the doctor, and doctor right away, as soon as he took his blood, they says, we have a real problem. And so they sent him down to Ann Arbor. They had a special little building for blood diseases, for leukemia especially. And then Mom and Dad, when I got home from school a few days later, I said, so what's the matter with John? And they said, he's got leukemia. And I said, what's that? And I said, we have no idea. Nobody explained it to him. And so I go to school, and they said, so what about your brother? Friends, mutual friends. He's got leukemia. And so then the science professor said, just right, first time I heard it, there's no cure for leukemia.
So this was back when you were still living in Bloomfield, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
And-
that was a shockaroo, and then it was 9 months of watching him go from probably 150 pounds, because he was about the same, we're all over
Yeah.
6 foot tall, and he went from probably 150, and when he died he was about 70 pounds, so he was just skin and bone from
And how long did it take for all this to happen?
about 9 months. He died 2 days before his 18th birthday in November.
And how old was your brother Bill at this time?
He was 102, I think. He would have been 12. Yeah,
12.
yeah. 4 years difference with us.
So this had a terrible effect on the whole family,
Oh
I'm
yes,
sure.
yeah. It was just unbelievable to find out that there was no cure for what he had.
So it's almost like by the time you moved out to Gladwin, is that right?
Goodrich.
Goodrich, rather. It was kind of like you needed to start a new life in a way, wasn't it?
It pretty much was, and we pretty much did
Yeah.
too. So, yeah.
We'll pick up on that in a minute. We'll take a break.
Hi, everybody. I'm Terry Stiles.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Service, and I'm the producer of Our Community Access. Terry and I started our show 8 years ago to bring our community into your living rooms.
Our Community Access is a show born from the rich diversity of our community, and we want to brag about it and the people creating that diversity.
Over the year, we've been from fox hunts to beekeeping and right in your own backyard.
We welcome new businesses, chamber fashion, senior hobbies, class reunions, and much, much more.
We've covered all our celebrations from Leonard Strawberry Festival to our premier Lone Ranger Parade.
But there's still more avenues that we plan on going on.
So watch our Community Access at 9:30 and 5:30 every day, and you have a great, great week.
Back with Pastor Bob Service. Okay, you moved from Bloomfield to Goodrich.
Yes.
To start kind of a new life because you tragically lost your brother from an illness and the family had to move on. And your dad and mom bought a small farm out there. Tell me about your life from that point forward as far as where did you work? What did you do next?
Okay. I was planning to go to Michigan State in the fall, but soon after I graduated, got the draft notice, a report for my physical. So I went down and did all that, and my dad had been out of work a long time because he was physically he was just really sickly. And so he couldn't work, and so I was taking care of the family. So I had to go get a job and support the family. So I went to work at General Motors myself and took care of the family until he could get back to work. And so they put, instead of 1A, they gave me 1A rating for the draft. And then when I was supporting my mom and dad and my younger brother, they put me on 3A. And so they didn't draft me. So that got me out of the out of that situation. And so then I went from working in the factory to working for a finance company, which was very interesting because with my personality, it's kind of hard to repossess cars and things when you're laughing and singing and stuff, but which kind of irritated the people I was, but I worked for a finance company for a while and then left there and was wondering what I was going to do after 3 years there. And then a pastor friend from the church around the corner from the one I went to, we played ball together, and he said, why don't you go to college? Because then I was Sunday school superintendent and youth director at my church.
So you were religiously involved
Oh, yeah,
during all this?
Oh yes, very much so, yes. And so why don't you take some classes at Detroit Bible College and to help you in your ministry at church? So I did, and so I signed up. After being out of high school for a few years, I signed up for a full load, so I took 18 hours my first semester, which was really crazy. So I had to study again, and so I went from there and for 4.5 years, and 3 weeks before graduation, my pastor said a couple came from Oakwood Community Church, which was about 11 miles from Hadley where I was, and said they need somebody to fill in, or they need somebody to pastor the church. And I told them we have a young man that's just ready to graduate from Bible college, and so I went over and looked at the place, and it was terrible. It was so run down, beat up, old schoolhouse is what it was. And I says, I can't handle this. And my pastor in all his wisdom said, but this is just the building, the church is the people, so wait till you meet the people. And so my first Sunday was Mother's Day of 1966, on Mother's Day. And he was right. There were a dozen adults and then their kids, and that was it. There's probably 25 people in church that Sunday. And I was scared to death because, and then 3 weeks later I graduated from college, and I told them, I don't know what I'm going to do. So if you want me to come as your pastor, we'll vote next week, and we'll see what happens. And so I prayed about it, and I says, if I'm supposed to be here, I have to have 100% vote. If not, because 100% of 12 people, if one votes against you, that's too big of a majority against me, so percentage-wise. So they all voted for me, and so that started me in there. And it was an interesting place because they had no running water in the building. They had no septic system. The roof leaked like a sieve. There was just the most pitiful thing you ever saw. The plaster was all falling down all over the place.
Is that the old building that's
The old
still
building,
out there?
Yes. We
What-
remodeled it, and we've added to it since then. So
What was your biggest religious influence in your life?
I'd say the death of my brother, our brother. When
And
he-
that can force people in two different directions
It
sometimes,
certainly
can't
could.
it?
But we were very strong. All three of us boys were very strong Christian young men. And my brother, I had to get a driver's license as soon as I turned 16 to help drive Mom back and forth to the hospital, drive Dad to work, and go sit with my brother and watch him fade away. And then we were so close that the day my brother died, I got there and my dad came out and he said, you can't go see your brother anymore because he's so bad. He looks so bad and he can hardly talk, and I don't want you to see him the way he is. And so I didn't. And so he came, a while later he came out and he said, well, he's gone. And he said his last words were, I'm tired of fighting, Lord, take me home. And he left this life. So it was quite a thing. It was probably the worst experience of my life. But I had a strong family, and now I have a strong family yet, because now I'm married with a great wife and son, and so things are good.
At what point did the light go on as far as you wanting to be a pastor or be a minister?
Yeah, I didn't know why I was in Bible college or what I was going to do. My ministry up to then was mostly with youth, and then when I went to Oakwood Church, getting involved again with the youth and everything. But the big sign to me was when we had to put the new roof on, because it was leaking so bad. And I said, before we start remodeling the inside, we have to put a roof on. And so we get out there, I'd say, okay, on Sunday, I'd say, okay, people, pray all week, because anybody who can get here during the week, we have to peel all that old roofing off to get ready for the new roofing. And so what happened, they have these 12-foot wide boards that they had for the roof, and between each board was about an inch, because they put wood shingles, and then on top of that they had roll roofing and then shingles on top of that. So you take scoop shovels and peel all that off, and then one of the men would come and put little strips of wood, because when you put a hammer, it'll go right through that if you hit a crack.
Yeah.
And so I said, pray that it won't rain, because if it does, it'll wipe out the rest of that plaster, will come down and we'll be in a mess. And then Saturday, we need a bunch of guys to put shingles on. It didn't rain all week, and on Saturday, storm warnings were out. We got up on that roof, and it was lightning all around us. And when the last man got off the roof, it poured like crazy. So on Sunday, we were so excited and just praising and everything. It was really neat. And I said, okay, we're going to do it now on the north side. Same thing, pray that it won't rain. And it didn't rain all week, but on Saturday, the storms were all around us again. And it didn't rain until the last guy got off the roof. And I says, this is where I know I have to be, because that was a sign to me, this is where you're going to be. So I've been there. And I found out later, I may have slipped on it earlier, but later somebody said, you know, we were going to try one more time on a pastor, and so you were coming to fill in until we decided if we were going to give up and sell the property and be on our ways to other churches. But since it grew like crazy, we're still in there. So.
Okay, now, we don't have a lot of time left, unfortunately, but tell me, when did you meet your wife during the course of all this?
Well, that's good, because I was dating her best friend, and I'd already been at Oakwood Church for 9 years, single, and she introduced me to Janella at a luncheon we had at the church, and there was something special about her, and so I dated the two of them for a while, which is pretty crazy, and then she says, give me the ultimatum, either it's me or forget it, I'm gonna look elsewhere for a husband. And so we made, I give you my story, but if she sees this, she'll deny it. So anyway, so we got married. I'd been in the ministry for 10 years and we got married, and that was quite a thing, because these young people in the church I was like their dad or whatever, and they didn't appreciate me getting married and spending some of my time with her. And then our son came along about 4 years later, and that was a complete blessing to us. He's been just the greatest kid and the greatest young man now. He's 34 now, and he has 2 little girls, and they live in Traverse City, which is kind of
Not a bad place to visit.
It isn't, but it's 3.5 hours to get up there where he is, and so we don't get to see him as much as we would like. So.
You know, we could talk and talk and talk and talk. It's been a real joy having you with us. Thanks for letting us talk to you.
Okay.
You're a blessing to our community.
And it has been a blessing to me too. I know a lot of people around here, yes.
We're going to have more with Pastor Bob Service during our next episode of My Life, so please join us. Thanks for watching. You're watching OCTV, Oxford Community Television, serving Oxford, Addison Township, and the village of Leonard.